Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm asking you to provide funding for the reinstatement of the closed section of the Summit Road. My submission is on behalf of the Lyttelton Community Association. I emailed our 100 members attaching my draft submission. 20 replied, 19 in favour and 1 against. The response rate was rather disappointing, but getting engagement is difficult.
Do feel free to sit down if you'd prefer. That's fine. Yeah, thank you.
The response rate was rather disappointing, but getting engagement is difficult, as I'm sure you know from your own work. The slide shows the location of Summit Road on the Port Hills. The dark wiggly line through the middle is the closed section and is about 5 kilometres long. The road itself goes from Gebby's Pass to Evans Pass, a distance of about 28 kilometres, and then on to Godley Head. And do I get to do the next slide? So here's a picture of the Summit Road as it is now, in its unrepaired state in the middle section. This is close to the gondola. And here's a more general view from the gondola, as you can probably see from the bottom right-hand corner of the Summit Road wiggling its way along the top there, with extensive views over the harbour. As I say in my submission, the Summit Road provides great amenity value. The location provides wonderful views of Lyttelton Harbour from the south side and of Christchurch and across the Canterbury Plains to the Southern Alps from the north side. There are numerous lay-bys where you can stop and take in the views safely. Having a major chunk of the road missing makes taking visitors up there much less pleasurable than it used to be, as you have to attack it from both ends. There are, of course, walking tracks up the Port Hills from both sides, and I enjoy walking those too, but that's not always possible. There are several reasons why the council has not seen fit to reinstate the road. I'm not sure what they are, but they may include cost. Well, that's a matter of priorities. It seems that the council don't have it as high on their list as I do. Not only is funding missing from this year, but I was unable to find it in the long-term plan either. You may think if you ignore it long enough, we will forget about it. Well, we haven't. Closing the road permanently by stealth, I think, would be a mean trick. Another reason is that the road has already been annexed by walkers and cyclists. Yes, they are enjoying the use of it, but the Port Hills are bound with cycle and walking tracks. Castle Rock mountain bike track and the Crater Rim walkway are right next to the Summit Road, and from the walkway you get an even better view than you do from the road. It's dangerous. The danger from falling rocks argument seems to be used whenever council want to stop you going somewhere. Numerous tracks have closure notices where the danger is no more apparent than elsewhere where it's open. There are some pretty mystifying decisions made about what's dangerous and what's not. In the case of the Summit Road, for example, it would appear not to be dangerous for pedestrians and cyclists, who are now permitted to use the road, whereas it would be too dangerous for a car if rolling rocks are the perceived problem. A further one which I've heard is that the road is beyond economic repair. Well, you can say a TV set is beyond economic repair because you can go and buy a new one that costs less than mending it. In the case of a road whose amenity value is probably not measured in money, that's much more difficult. And if you were to say, well, you could use State Highway 75 to get from A to B instead, it is not the same thing. If we go back to my TV analogy, it would be like saying, well, it's beyond economic repair, but you could buy a radio instead. I hope I provided some compelling reasons in the submission why you should include the reinstatement of the road for us all to enjoy. It doesn't need to be a motorway, just a pleasant country road. Thanks very much for listening. Ngā mihi nui, kia ora rawa atu.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor, is there anyone with any questions? Aaron.
It would be handy, I think, for us to get a briefing on this at some point.
Yeah, no, we will do. You just need to submit a question. I mean, Dave? Yeah, so Sam's collecting questions, and certainly it was on my list, having listened to the submission, just for an update on where this was up to, because I don't recall off the top of my head either.
Okay, and I'll ask a slightly left field question, because you did mention the falling rocks, but what about it was partially open for like cycling through.
It is.
Oh, it is. Is it? Oh, I've been up there. Sorry.
Yeah. So if cyclists and
So they're allowed to. But what about?
Yeah, initially it was closed to everyone, but the council did quite a lot of work in removing the rocks from the road and opened it to cyclists.
We'll get the information because councillors have been briefed on this before, but I cannot recall off the top of my head the situation. So we'll get an update. You've clearly got your message through.
Thank you.
And as you say, it's a question of priority, and the councillors are very much focused on prioritisation in this annual plan process.
I understand that, but even if you find it impossible to find funds this time, I would like to see it find its way back into the long-term plan rather than just disappearing altogether.
Well, and that's something that we could recommend to the next LTP process, and that might be a solution which doesn't give you instantly what you're after, but it enables us to stick to the program, as it were, focusing the annual plan on things that are in the LTP and sort of relatively minor adjustments to the LTP, even though they relate to significant sums of money, and then but recommend that the incoming council address the question again in the LTP.
Thank you. Living in Lyttelton, we are used to having to take a long-term view.
I know, and you know, Lyttelton suffered a lot after the earthquakes, and you know, I mean, I went to the reopening of the time ball that they have, you know, redeveloped.
Yep.
And you know, it just had one of those senses of magic moments, but it had taken, I don't know how many years for the department to.
About 8, I think.
To address it, yeah. But those moments do happen, so let's leave it to where it is. But we will get a briefing on it. So thank you very much for going to all of the trouble of making a submission and coming in person.
Thank you.
It's appreciated. Thank you. Next one is Victoria Andrews.